Does anybody have any idea how many CRM products there are out there? Take a guess. Would anybody be prepared to put $50 on 100 products?
There has to be more.
You think there has to be more?
Okay.
We don't support each way bets, do we, Jenny? No. Okay, so which way are you going?
5,000.
Well, you're going for 5,000.
Yeah. Easy.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else prepared to put $50 on something?
We get more wallet out.
There are actually, you are both 100 products on the market that sell themselves as a CRM product. So that in and of itself should explain why I'm not going to try and do features and benefits and advantages or whatever else I might choose to do about that number. And even to bamboozle you with 4 or 5 that are my choice out of 400 would probably even then be a waste of time. So that is not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is give you some tools to make that decision within your organisation. Because undoubtedly, with the 6 people, including Jenny, in the room, you probably come from different organisations, different requirements, so it is quite feasible that the right answer for each of you will be a different answer. So, moving slightly, at any rate, into accountancy. If you wanted to improve the bottom line of an organisation, what can you do? And we don't have a flip chart in here, I was expecting one. Never mind. I'll borrow one of these and then I can summarise. So, what things can you do if you were given the brief? You've got an organisation, I'm not going to tell you anything more about that organisation, and you have been given the brief to take the bottom line of that organisation from here to here, whatever that means. What are your options? So we can increase revenue and reduce costs. Correct. Would you like to go into either of those in a little more detail?
Price and volume on revenue.
So price of services can increase and volume. Yep.
Increase your market.
Yep. I've got some clues for you. So clue 1.
Is that a graph?
Sorry?
Is that a graph?
No, it's a picture.
Leads.
Correct!
Oh, leads.
They are leads
Very
of
good.
a sort.
Leads, yeah.
So we can get more leads. What else can we do? Because leads in and of themselves are useless.
More activity.
You get, sorry,
More activity.
you're on the right
More
lines,
boiling.
but
Get
not
your-
quite.
Get your leads boiling.
Yeah, oh, we've got a creative lot in here. This is great. Keep going. What else is going on in that picture?
Heating, water, trade, steam, heat.
Increase the existing potential.
Focusing attention.
Experimenting.
Focusing, yeah.
This is interesting the way different people think, because none of those were ideas I came up with, but then I started with the answer and then looked for pictures that illustrated it. What that one is reminding us of, supposedly, is increasing the conversion rate. So we are converting water to steam, increase the conversion rate, because at the end of the day, if your phones are ringing off the hook and everyone is just taking the time of whoever answers your phones and they're saying, that was great, I'll go down the road, what you've got is an increased cost and your people haven't got time to actually sell because they're just answering the phone all the time, so we don't want that. What else can we do?
Payment gateways? Right.
Loyalty program.
Improve your credit management so that you're sure that
This is fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating.
Technology?
It is a frequent flyer.
Loyalty?
Okay.
No, you got.
Increase the frequency that these customers buy from you.
Wow.
So if currently they buy once a month, can we get them to buy twice a month?
Money. Money.
It is money. Well spotted.
Gold,
It's
money.
definitely money. It's probably gold.
Yeah.
I think they're actually pound coins, but I'm not
Let's do it.
absolutely sure.
Get from point A to point B, step by step.
Increase cash flow.
Increase the size of the sale. So each time that people come back to you, if you can make them spend an average of $1,000 instead of $800, we are improving bottom line. And the last one is not really a guessing game because I just could not find an image that would stimulate conversation. We can increase the profit of the sales.
I think that probably saved how we feel about ourselves because we didn't do well on the rest of them and what we got.
That's fine.
And we got a good insight the way you think.
Yeah.
You were just saying in a slightly different way, so it's certainly not wrong. So what I'm now going to do is show you how that works. So this is a fairly simple mathematical build with this. So the number of leads multiplied by the conversion rate, or number of leads in a period. We can do this for any period that you like, but you have to use the same period throughout the exercise. So the number of leads in that period multiplied by your conversion rate gives you the number of new customers within that time frame, within that period. The frequency of sale in that same period gives you the number of sales from new customers. The size of the sale gives you the revenue from new customers. And your profit margin, your average profit margin, then gives you the profit from new customers. So to explain that a little bit more clearly, there is a worked example of how that works. So all of the 5 features that I mentioned can be helped by a CRM project, assuming that CRM project is done successfully, so putting you in the first group that Jenny talked about rather than the second group who spend lots of money and get nothing for it. So assuming we're going to be in that second group, what do you think is a reasonable percentage improvement that we can get for those 5 features? So increase in leads, increase in conversion rate, in the frequency of sale, the size of sale, and the profit margin.
Is this if you put in a CRM?
Well, regardless, but just what do you think
What
is
could you get?
reasonable? What I'm looking to show you is the compounding effect. If
Okay.
we put our effort in across the board, rather than
Yeah.
just focusing, putting all of our effort in one. Because if we leave 4 of those the same and put all of our effort into one of them, whatever that percentage is the change in percentage at the bottom. Okay, so you're going for 7%.
Same rate for all of them, right?
Yes, so it's just, let's say, we're taking our business from here by a percentage.
Alright, I reckon, let's say 5%.
Okay, so we're going for 5. I chose 10. If we do a 10% increase These are the new numbers. So the 50 leads becomes 55. The conversion rate goes from 10 to 11, which means the number of new customers has gone from 5 to 6.05. The frequency of sale goes from 5 to 5.5, which means the number of new sales has gone from 25 to 33 and a bit. The size of the sale has gone from 1,000 to 1,100, which means that the revenue from new customers has gone from 25 to 36. The profit margin has gone from 30 to 33, and the bottom line has gone from $7,500 to $12,000. So 10% across your business gives you a 62% increase in your bottom line. And a successful CRM solution can easily give you that 10% lift. So that should show you why it is worthwhile putting in a CRM solution. Those numbers are quite telling. The first time I saw that chart, I really didn't believe it. I kept going through it. Where have they done the maths? It should be 10% at the bottom. But no,
Did you see that in reality? Like,
I've seen better than that in some cases, but I've seen worse than that, to be honest. It really does come down to how you implement and making sure that you do it correctly. Because CRM is absolutely, and I'm not saying it's unique, I'm sure there are plenty of other contenders for this prize, but it can be hugely successful or not. And it really does depend. However, what I would say is that the reason that it fails is very, very rarely because you chose technology X over technology Y. That might be the reason that people give you, and they'll say, oh, but if we'd chosen Y, this wouldn't have happened and we could have done that. The chances are, having chosen X, if you look in detail at the project, there will be other reasons, and I'll come into what the project should comprise a little bit later on.
What's been your findings in existing customers? So CRM stands for customer.
It stands for Customer Relationship Management.
So for existing customers, what's been the growth?
So you're saying,
repeat customers are coming back. How have you used CRM to grow?
it is actually very similar to this sort of thing, but this just focuses on the new customers into an organisation. But if we can also increase the number of sales from existing customers and increase the revenue from existing customers and increase the profit from existing customers, I haven't actually done the maths if we drop the top two out, but we're probably going to get, if we were to apply the 10%, 10%, 10%, we're probably going to get about 35% or something of that order, rather than the 62% that when we do 10% 5 times. But I'll be honest with you, I've not done the maths to see it there. And from my experience when working with our clients, obviously the benefits when they are there do affect both existing customers and new customers. Because typically, to give you a couple of examples here, one of our clients, one of the key deliverables that we gave them was the ability to produce their proposals much more quickly. Now, this was a client that had a very complex proposal. A typical length of it would be about 20 pages, including terms and conditions and so on and so forth. And pretty much throughout that 20 pages, there was information that was specific to that sale. They were able to get the time that it takes to produce a proposal down from about 4 hours to about half an hour. And that was the entire thing. That included keying into CRM the products that they were selling, going through the motions and spitting out and picking up off the printer the proposal that could then be mailed, or obviously if they choose to email, not bothering with the printout. So in that alone, with that client, previously, if we assume that the people producing those proposals cost $100 an hour, just to keep the maths relatively simple, that has brought the cost of that for each proposal down from $400 to $50, and has given them a further 3.5 hours to do other prospecting or follow-up into their market. So I can't give you the exact numbers, but even if they only got one more sale in that extra 3.5 hours that we've given them, you can see how this sort of number could appear. So in their case, they probably didn't manage to do a great deal of this, but they did huge amounts of that. So, I'm sure, given your background, you've all heard this statement. But of course, what is really true is not cash flow, because I'm sure you've also all heard of companies that have massive cash flow, but very low or even negative profit, and therefore don't survive. So what's really king is, yes, cash flow is important, but it's profit. And I'm sure you're also aware that this revenue and profit comes from your customers. That much is child's play. However, how many of you have heard of the 80-20 rule?
Yes. Yep, I heard it.
Okay, so you've heard of the 80-20 rule. Has anyone else heard of the 80-20 rule? Oh,
Use of it.
there's lots of uses. The beauty of the 80-20 rule is it's pretty much universally true. How I'm using it, and this is backed up by research, is that 20% of your customers will give you 80% of your revenue. The question is, which 20%? And how do you identify the 20% to put the effort in so that you can grow? Because obviously if you can double the people in the 20% and get rid of some of the 80%, things are going to look really rosy for you. Another thing that a lot of people don't realise with the 80-20 rule is it compounds. So not only do we get 80% of our revenue from 20% of the customers, but we get 80% of 80% of the revenue, which is 64%, from 20% of 20% of the customers. In other words, 4% give us 64%. And you can check this. I would have thought that in pretty much any business, and I've done it with a number of my clients, and I've done it with my own business, if you look at the revenue per client, and then you look at the revenue for the top 20%, it will be pretty close to 80%. It's not going to be bang on, for sure, but it's going to be close. One of the things that you can do very trivially with a CRM technology is based on some parameters, and what the parameters are will vary on your business, but you can do what's called the A, B, C, D classification. Now most people just think, well, A is better than B, is better than C, is better than D. I actually know a nicer version. It's still A, B, C, D. So we've got the awesome customers, who are probably up in the 4%. We've got the basic customers. We've got the costly customers. Any offers for dead? Sorry. Any offers for D? Dead. Right. I'll take the prize for that one. So you've got your awesome, basic, costly, and dead customers. And obviously where you want to focus your effort is, well, the dead have got rid of themselves pretty much because they're not really customers anymore. Costly, there's a really nice competitor just over the road. I'll give you his details. He'd love to look after you. Basics, we want to move up to awesome. Now, there is, of course, natural churn and things going on, so you're never going to completely get rid of that, but at least knowing who the awesomes are, what properties do those awesomes have? And then with your marketing, you go out to get more customers, whether they're organisations or individuals, who closely match the properties of the people that we already know are awesome. Because somebody said, it might have been Einstein, but the best predictor of the future is history. So working out what an awesome customer, well, first of all, you work out who are the awesome customers. CRM will help you do that. Then you look at the profile of those awesome customers, and then you target your marketing so you go and get more of the awesome customers, and don't worry about looking for the basics, the costlies, and the dead. So what does CRM give us that would help with any of that? Well, there's a whole load of things in terms of enabling us to see data so that we can identify who are the awesome, what are the awesome buying from us, what other parameters, so is there a geographical parameter? Is there a turnover, profit, business size, industry type? What are those parameters that define awesome for your business? So some of the things that CRM does that helps with that. It will show you which of your lead sources are bringing home the bacon. You can see revenue by lead source, either as a proportion or as a dollar number. You can track the whole of the sale from this person came to a particular page on the website, downloaded this white paper, did this, phoned in. Or maybe they saw an advert or an article that you placed in a magazine and they phoned in. You know they phoned in from that particular magazine because you have a dedicated phone number or you had a special offer or something. So you can record, you're not just doing some marketing and getting some results, you are able to track the results back to the effort. CRM, because it will be across the whole organisation, it will help with data maintenance. One of our clients, when we were first brought in to help them with their CRM solution, was running off a stupid number of spreadsheets. And when we looked at those spreadsheets, because of who the client was, an awful lot of them contained names, addresses and phone numbers of people with particular roles within councils across New South Wales and elsewhere, but they were mainly New South Wales focused. Now, at risk of stating the obvious, council personnel change. They often change in big chunks. There's an election, and a large proportion of those councils will now have a new whatever in a particular position. The system pre-CRM for this particular client meant that everybody who owned or was responsible for one of those spreadsheets had to go in and update it. And of course, given that the employees of this organisation were human like you and me, not all of them happened. So we've then got a situation where spreadsheet A says that the role in question is John Jones. Spreadsheet B says that it's Fred Brown, which is right. So now somebody has to take time to phone the organisation and say, is your whatever still John Jones? Or is it still Fred Brown? So just the data maintenance and having one source of truth can be hugely beneficial. Because with that system, now one person takes the responsibility post-election or post-whatever other shake-up causes the change, and everybody has the benefit of the information. And while it might not be as noticeable in organisations that are not dealing with people who are subject to elections, the same thing happens. All the people next door are looking at getting a new job, presumably. That means that at some point in the future, their position and any database that they're in is going to be incorrect. Or somebody is going to have to update it with whoever the new person is. CRM, because it presents such a lot of data, it enables us to run those marketing campaigns based on real data. We're not forced to constantly go out and buy a list and start from scratch. If we've previously identified who our awesome people are, we can now go in and we can target specifically those people to try and upsell and increase their value to us. We can also go out and, if we do choose to buy data, we can go to the list broker and we can say we want a list that meets the criteria of our awesome, of our known awesome current clients. CRM as an organisational-wide implementation also presents a lot of information from across the organisation to all of the sales teams and to other people as and when they need it. So that means that without going through umpteen different other systems and wading through their emails, when they go out to visit a client or visit a prospect, they can quickly get a snapshot of what's happening within the relationship between their organisation, your organisation, and the client or prospect. Obviously with prospects, by definition, there is a much smaller history. But I'm sure you've all heard stories of the like of a salesperson going into an organisation with a view to selling something new and getting in to report to someone, and we've got the new whiz-bang whatever, wouldn't you like, typical sales spiel, not aware that currently there is a big issue with another product provided a little bit ago. And as a salesperson, you do not look good going in and saying, I'm sure you'd love to buy more from us, when the whole organisation is embroiled in a, you sold us this and now you won't fix it, or you sold us this and now it's broken, or whatever the service case might be. And if nothing else, having that information enables you to go in and pour oil on troubled waters, rather than going in with a view of doing another great big sale, help you get your numbers, and instead being greeted with, why on earth would I want to buy from you? We've got this problem, that problem, the other problem. Real-time information. Because CRM is backed, any good CRM is backed by a database, as things happen in the organisation, the effect of those things flows through and reports are up to date. Compare that to the spreadsheet that got ran off last week or last month's sales meeting, and that hard copy spreadsheet gives you nothing about what's happened since then. It's very easy with a CRM solution because you're tracking all of the activity with everybody in your organisation across everybody in the client organisation, or at least all the relevant activity. You know who's purchased and who hasn't, so it's easy to pick out who hasn't purchased and then do whatever is appropriate given your sales cycle, find out why they haven't purchased or why their purchase pattern has changed from what it used to be. And because you can see so much about clients and also prospects, it's also easy to structure things where you can upsell. So I've worked with some of our clients, and one of the things that we've done is put product, things that complement a particular product, or alternatives. So if a client, and this tends to be more sort of order-taking sales rather than complex sales, but if a client requests product A, the system might show you that there is no product A in stock, but rather than just saying, I'm terribly sorry, we'll have some more product A in next week or next month, you're able to say, we don't have product A, but can I offer you product B? And product B has all the following features, benefits, and even advantages over product A. Not least that we actually have product B installed, but we don't need to admit that necessarily. And the final point, but it's by no means the only thing that CRM does for you, is it prevents discounting outside of defined limits. And if we think back to profit, I'm sure you're all very aware how what sounds superficially like a very small discount has a huge hit on the profit, because of course your cost of goods sold is still exactly the same. So any discount you give is totally off the profit. So why do you, and then as I mentioned with the client that we worked with where they were producing proposals, You can do lots of things that bring in automation, so a number of the sales tasks are a lot easier. And not only sales, the same is true for marketing and service. The whole of this automation and data management means that it's a lot easier for this sort of stuff to be done and decisions to be made where they need to be made. So, again, looking at some of the reasons that you might want CRM. A common reason that people embark on the CRM journey is that they become aware that prospects and existing clients are not being followed up. So those inbound calls, inbound communications are happening, but they are not being followed up. And I'm going to have to get a move on. They may be aware that sales are dropping. And whether that's that you're losing sales, losing customers, or whether it is because the size of the sale is going down, but you're seeing that. It may be that your sales process and your sales activity is such that your salespeople and all the rest of the people in your organisation are hugely busy. They're doing lots and lots and lots of stuff, but it's not actually on time. What processes does CRM need to help us with? This is where you need to take a long, hard look at your business processes. How does your sales process work? What does your marketing department do prior to getting those nice new glossy brochures produced? Why are they produced? Who were they targeting? So on and so forth. What data do you need to consider? And when you think about data, there are the 4 V's of data. And those 4 V's are volume, variety, veracity, and velocity. So how much data is there? What are the different types of data in there? How accurate is the data now? The data may have been entered correctly way back when, but since have changed and not been updated. Or maybe it was entered incorrectly in the first place. After all, most of it's entered by human beings, and not many of us, present company accepted, are perfect. And how rapidly does that data change? Is this something that is changing literally as you watch it? Or is it stuff that is staying, like those council personnel I mentioned earlier? Is it staying the same for several months or even years? We also need to look at where is it located? And perhaps more importantly, where can it be located in the future? So specifically, can we locate it off-site? If it can go off-site, can it go offshore? That question will rule out some of the CRM technologies, because some of the cloud-based ones give you no control over where your data is located. Question number 4, who are the users? And of course, we need to know lots of things about those users. This is not just a list of John, Mary, Fred and Joe. We need to know things like, do these people work in the office, or do they need to go out in the field? If they're out in the field, do they need access to CRM while they're out in the field? Will they need to use their own device? So So do these people operate in a BYOD, bring your own device environment? If they do, that means that you need a technology that will support lots of different hardware. We then need to think, how technology literate are these people already? If you're dealing with people, as I did with a project I did before I left the UK, where you need to teach them how to use a mouse, implementing a complex CRM solution, where there are really complex, you've got to click here, do this, move there, da 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 da, that's not going to fly with that sort of audience. How much time do these people have to give to the project? That answer will undoubtedly vary across the pool of people in question. There will be a few people who bubble up as being obvious contenders for power users, help with the testing, so on and so forth. And there will be others who really just want it to be put on a plate and given to them with some training so they can carry on and do their job as simply as possible. When looking at the users, we also need to think about what type of training do they need. Are they going to be interested in the project as a whole and want to be involved in the potential? Or do we have to distill it right the way down and lead them by the hand? So Flossie, in your job, you need to do X. To do X, you do this, you do this, you do this, you click on OK, and it's done. And then Flossie will do this, 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 about 10 or a dozen or 100 times, and she then knows how to do it. All of these people exist in most organisations, so we can't assume that they're all the same and that they need the same level of training. And then finally, what reports do we need out of CRM? That, of course, touches on the processes that we have already worked out and the data. But there's also a bit of a caveat here, because what a user calls a report in many solutions may actually be delivered by a view or a form or a chart or a dashboard. And equally, what is delivered as a report from a technology perspective may not be a report as in the management sense at all. It may be much more of a letter that then gets sent out to a customer, or it may be a proposal document like I've previously mentioned. So lots of things that it might be. So there's the 5 questions. And being very honest with you, if you get proper, detailed answers to those 5 questions, you will be much stronger in terms of going forward and getting the right solution for you. I'm now, just to wrap up, going to briefly look at the phases of a project. So any project like this, even if we're only doing a single lump of functionality as an implementation, should have these 3 phases. So scoping and design, implementation and post-implementation. And my main focus here is on the scoping, because that's the one, if you get that right, things will be a lot better. So scoping or requirements. I suspect that you have all seen some variation of this slide. So here we've got what the customer wanted. They wanted a very simple tyre and a piece of old rope for the kids to play on. Up here is how the customer explained it. And in between the two, and you can download all of these slides, I'll give you the URL later so you can look at this in your own time, but in between are variations, none of which were what the customer actually wanted, although most of them, to a degree, are a swing of sorts. So we've looked at the 3 phases that you need. Having said that, I never cease to be amazed just how many projects do no scoping. They just start doing. They jump in, they somehow decide on the technology, I've no idea how, probably because the salesperson convinced them that their product was the best, and they start implementing. Somewhere during the implementation, they might do a bit of testing, not much. And then they will go live. And they wonder why there are problems. So no scoping, no reasons for doing it, no understanding of the things we've been talking about, but we go live. By contrast, that is what your project should look like. So scoping, and you then do a scoping, you then make the decision as to whether CRM at all can do what we want. Then we go into some design. So as part of the scoping, we'll have worked out at least some of the technologies, if not the technology to go with. Then we look at design, and design is how do you leverage the power of what you've got in that product that you've decided to, as simply as possible, meet your specific requirements. Don't reinvent the wheel. And I've worked with many, many people on project rescues where a lot of it has been reinventing the wheel. So writing stuff from scratch where if they'd understood what was there in the box, they had something that was very, very close. Once we've done the design, again, we decide, are we still doing this? Then we get down and do what we need to. Note there's a fairly big overlap here because you do typically need to do some rethink as you start to implement and so on. We then have testing. Pretty much